Hello friends, welcome to my channel. I'm Em and my books are everywhere. Today I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite characters in all of literature, and I say literature loosely. I'm talking about the intrepid girl detective Nancy Drew. Now, y'all may have heard me talk about Nancy Drew in other videos because I did read Nancy Drew pretty early on, and that kind of started my love of mysteries, that and the Happy Hollisters. But Nancy Drew has influenced me in a lot of different ways, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about Nancy Drew the character, a little bit about the Nancy Drew publication history, and just some other Nancy Drew tidbits. So Nancy Drew was created by Edward Stratemeyer, and he was a publisher that had had great success with the Hardy Boys, doing a series like that with ghostwriters. So it wasn't just one author writing the stories, and he released them pretty frequently, almost like a subscription. And so they were pretty prevalent, and he wanted a character that was similar to the Hardy Boys, but that would appeal to girls especially. And he came up with the idea for Nancy Drew, and he hired Mildred Wirt to be the first writer of the Nancy Drew series. And she wrote, I think she wrote the first 4 or 5 books, and then other people started writing them. So the first Nancy Drew book debuted in 1930, and it was The Secret of the Old Clock. And this is what the covers looked like back then, a little different than the yellow books that we're used to now. This is a reissue of that original cover. This original edition is different also in another way than the ones that we're probably used to, because in the 50s, the books were revised and shortened. So you can see how thick this is compared to the size of the more recent ones. So this is The Mystery at Lilac Inn, and this is book number 4. And this is Mystery at Lilac Inn, the original cover. In the 50s, when the books were revised and shortened, they took out some of the problematic elements that were in here, and then the books were revised again in the 1980s. So lots of revisions to have her kind of keep up with the times and get rid of some of the problematic elements of the stories and make it appeal to a wider audience. So recently, the publisher reissued another set of Nancy Drew covers. So I'm going to show you the original cover for The Mystery at Lilac Inn, the revised cover for The Mystery at Lilac Inn, and the most recent cover for The Mystery at Lilac Inn. And I haven't read this book to see how it compares to this other one, but they look approximately the same size, so I don't know that anything was revised in the print of it. But I will read it and I will let you know. The books are so interesting because when Nancy Drew first started, she was around 16 years old, and currently I think the more recent books she's 18, but she doesn't really age throughout all the books. And I've been rereading them this year, and even like time doesn't move in a chronological way even within the series. So the first book takes place in summer, the second book takes place in summer, the third book and fourth book I think are at the end of summer, one of them's in winter, and then we're back to summer, but she's still the same age. So that's very interesting that they decided to do that for the whole series. So really every Nancy Drew mystery, all 100 and something of them, take place during the span of 1 year, because she doesn't turn 19, she doesn't go off to college. So I think that that's a very interesting thing, but it also makes it kind of timeless because you could pick up any book. So it just all kind of takes place during that one time when they're all around 18 and having all of these adventures. And one other fun thing about Nancy Drew is that there are more series where Nancy isn't 18, where she's about 8 or 9, and I don't have any of those books, but I'll put a picture here. So these were books that I also would read to my nieces when they were little, to again instill that desire to read the Nancy Drew books when they got old enough. And they loved those books. I had them on audio and then also in the paperbacks that I would read to them. The audiobooks were great for when we were traveling. We listened to one that was about ice cream. I don't remember exactly what it was, but that I think was the first one that I introduced them to, and it was on a trip when we were traveling, probably coming back home from Disneyland, and we listened to that and they wanted more. So good job, Auntie M. And then there's a series called the Nancy Drew Diaries, where Nancy is a little bit older. I think it's just fun that Nancy Drew is still being held up as a role model, and because they are making these books that are more age appropriate, by making Nancy younger, the girls nowadays can relate to her more than here's this 18-year-old that's out solving mysteries, where like the Nancy Drew, I don't remember the name of the series, but I'll put it right here. The one where she's like 8 or 9, all the mysteries are like elementary school, like somebody stole the erasers and they need to find out who did it. So it's all like fun little things that are appropriate and things that could happen to a little girl that's between 8 and 9. And in these books, she is a teenager, but the situations that she's in are more modern. So for instance, in this one, it talks about podcast and Ned Talks, and just different things that are more modern and that kids nowadays could relate to more than the world of the 50s, which, and probably even the 80s, that were the last revisions, where there weren't cell phones and there weren't a lot of the technology things that we have now. So I am so happy that Nancy Drew is continuing to be promoted to kids, not just girls, everybody, everywhere. Another way that Nancy Drew is being promoted now is through video games. Her Interactive has made, I forget how many games, but they're available for PC, and those are pretty fun. I've played one. I think it was based on the Mystery of Shadow Ranch, but it was really cool. And then also, you guys know those like Hunt a Killer boxes? Well, they did a Nancy Drew one, and what mystery was that one based on? That one actually might have been an original mystery, because I think it was had something to do with like a botanical garden and museum, and there was some like poisonous plants or something like that. So that was really fun. I love to do those puzzle boxes, so definitely when I saw that Nancy Drew one, I had to get it. I love to have souvenirs of my fandom, whatever they may be. So I have lots of fun Nancy Drew stuff. So one of the things I have is this purse, and it was made from the image of the cover of the first book, kind of a bind up. So this says The Secret of the Old Clock and the Hidden Staircase. And it has like the blurb on the back, but it is just a little bag that you can carry stuff in. But I thought this was super cute and it needed to go on my shelf as one of my Nancy Drew collectibles. I also have this book, the Official Nancy Drew Handbook, and this is actually a fun one because it says skills, tips, and life lessons from everyone's favorite girl detective, and this is by Penny Warner, and it has stuff like teach yourself Morse code, and it has cope with a bad hair day and other hair emergencies. So just a random things, thwart a kidnapping, things that you probably could use and things that you hopefully will never have to use. But I just thought this was a fun little book, so I added it to my collection of Nancy Drew collectibles. Another thing I have is this Nancy Drew journal, and it does have the cover of The Secret in the Old Attic, and the inside has these pictures here from the series, and it's just a notebook. but I thought that was really cool. So I added that to my collection, and maybe one day I will write in it. And I just recently added this. So this is The Mysterious Case of Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, and this is by Carol Kismaric and Marvin Heffernan. And it's basically a book that's the history of the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew. It talks about Edward Stratemeyer, and it talks about society and what it was like when the Nancy Drew books were coming out. So like this is a high school over here. So just a fun, kind of like just little history of Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys and what her influence was and where they, the writers took inspiration for Nancy and the other characters. And then guys, this is one of my favorite Nancy Drew collectible things. This is the Lost Files of Nancy Drew, and this is an interactive book. First of all, there's this like little magnifying glass here that changes pictures. The scroll opens and closes, and there are things that you can open. There's a recipe over here. Lots of things, letters that you can read. I can't flip through everything. Just so fun. I love this. This is a book I bought when my niece was, gosh, how old was she? About 7 or 8, I think, when I bought it. And we had fun going through this together. So I was desperately trying to convert her to Nancy Drew. And I can say that I succeeded because she does love Nancy Drew. We went to Barnes & Noble last year sometime, and she's an adult now. And she's like, Auntie Em, I want something that's like Nancy Drew, but adults. So I feel like my mission is complete with her. She is a mystery reader and loves Nancy Drew. And my most recent addition, you saw at the beginning, is this tote bag that has Nancy Drew here, and this is the silhouette of the 1930s Nancy Drew. And then on the back, it has her friends, and they are in a wood. So I would guess that this is probably Bess and George, and probably Helen as well, because there is one mystery where Helen joins them after Bess and George have started being in the books. So I am a big fan of Nancy Drew, and I am not the only one. Nancy Drew is so popular with people my age, with people older than me, with people younger than me. She's an example and a role model and has been touted as such for many years. There are many famous women who are fans of Nancy Drew and read Nancy Drew as a child and felt that she was an influence in their lives. Supreme Court Justices Sandra Day O'Connor and Sonia Sotomayor, people like Hillary Clinton and Laura Bush. So I feel like I'm in pretty good company. And what are some of the reasons why Nancy Drew can be held up as a role model? Well, she's very independent, but she isn't so independent that she doesn't take help from her friends and her dad and just other people in the community. She is always responsible. She isn't rash, but she is adventurous. She also is very polite. She follows the society rules, and yet she does things that the girls at that time were not doing. And I just love the booktube community that's embraced Nancy Drew, and other people are reading her books. I love it. I think it's great, and not just as a nostalgia thing. I think that she can be enjoyed today. So many years later from when I first was introduced to Nancy Drew, I'm still having a great time, and she's still a role model for me in how she is so respectful of other people, and she's just kind and always wants to help people, and she wants to get involved if she's able to help. And I think that's a lesson that I certainly can continue to learn. And she's always prepared. And that's another thing that I have taken. And this is an influence on me from when I was very little, to always have things that I would need. So today I carry a Band-Aid and some wet wipes and some other things like that, because I feel like Nancy Drew would have that stuff if it was needed. Just the other day at work, somebody needed a Band-Aid and I had one, so I was able to take that out of my bag and it's like, here you go, Band-Aid. And just other things like that. I like to be prepared. I have, my car has extra glove compartments. So there's the main glove compartment and then there's one above that. And I keep a flashlight in there and binoculars. And of course, a notebook and a pen. That also is in my glove compartment. And a screwdriver, and just like some other stuff that could be necessary. And then in the third smaller little compartment that I have a little small first aid kit where I have some aspirin or some Excedrin because I get migraines, and so I keep some Excedrin in there just in case. And then also Band-Aids and wipes and anything that, you know, will fit in the little small emergency first aid kits. So I keep one of those in there too. So always being prepared, having some cash. There was one mystery where Nancy Drew's dad had given her two $20 bills just in case of emergency. And I thought, oh, that's a good idea to have some cash in case of emergency. She also keeps some extra clothing in her car. I don't do that, but I do have in my trunk. I do have a like a portable charger to like if I need to jumpstart my car, I could do that. And it's also an air compressor. And I also have like a road emergency kit back there. And I have a blanket. And actually, I probably do have, I have a bathing suit and a towel. I will take that back to Nancy Drew because she's prepared. And I like to be prepared. So all of that stuff that I have there in my car when I'm traveling, just in case I might need it, it's there. And then finally, one of the biggest influences that Nancy Drew has had on me and my lifestyle is my car. This is my car, and I've had it for 11 years now, and the day that I got a blue convertible was one of the happiest days of my life, because what kind of car does Nancy Drew drive? A blue convertible. So Nancy Drew's still influencing me. Do you like Nancy Drew? Have you been influenced by her? Please let me know in the comments. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.